Welcome to the channel Rare Coin Finder, and today we are diving into something that is going to absolutely blow your mind. Because what if I told you that a coin, a tiny little penny, something you might toss into a wishing well without a second thought, something you might find buried in the cushions of your couch, or rattling around in the bottom of an old jar your grandfather left behind, could be worth $15 million. Yes, you heard that right. $15 million. And we are talking about a coin that was minted not centuries ago, not in some ancient empire, not by kings or pharaohs, but right here in the United States of America in the year 1994, just a few decades ago, a coin that most people alive today were around to see, to hold, to spend, to throw away without a single thought. The 1994 D. Lincoln Penny. A coin so extraordinary, so breathtakingly rare, so wrapped in mystery and numismatic legend, that collectors across the entire world have spent years, sometimes entire lifetimes, hunting for it. And before we go any further, I want you to stay with us until the very end of this video because we have not one, not two, but three stunning coins to cover today, and I promise you each one is more jaw-dropping than the last. The stories we are about to share could genuinely change the way you look at the loose change in your pocket forever. So do not go anywhere, because what is coming next is going to leave you absolutely speechless. Now, let us set the scene. The year is 1994. The world is buzzing. The internet is just beginning to creep into everyday life, pop culture is exploding, and America is humming along with an energy that felt electric. At the Denver Mint, workers are doing what they do every single day, feeding blanks into massive presses, stamping out millions and millions of Lincoln pennies, coins that will flood into circulation, pass through millions of hands, and be spent on candy bars, newspapers, parking meters, never given a second glance. The 1994 D. Lincoln Penny, with that unmistakable D mint mark stamped beneath the year on the obverse, rolls off the line like countless others. But somewhere in that massive, relentless production, something went wrong. Or, depending on how you look at it, something went incredibly, magnificently, life-changingly right. Because nestled within the standard run of 1994 D pennies, there exists specimens so unusual, so defying of the normal minting process, that they stand completely apart from every other coin struck that year. These are not just pennies. These are anomalies, treasures forged by accident, preserved by fate, and now valued at figures that make grown adults stop breathing for a moment when they hear them. So what exactly makes the 1994 D. Lincoln Penny so special? Let us talk about the errors, because in the world of rare coins, errors are not mistakes, they are miracles. One of the most prized varieties of the 1994 D. Lincoln Penny is the double die obverse, a stunning error where the coin's design was struck twice at slightly different angles, causing a visible doubling effect on Lincoln's portrait, on the date, on the inscriptions. When you hold one of these coins under a loop, you see it immediately, that ghostly shadow of a second impression laid right over the first, like the coin is showing you two realities at once. It is eerie. It is beautiful. It is worth an extraordinary amount of money. And then there is the off-center strike, where the die comes down not perfectly centered on the blank, but shifted, sometimes dramatically, leaving part of the design floating in empty, unstruck metal. The more dramatic the shift, the rarer the coin, and the more collectors will pay to own it. Some off-center 1994 D pennies are shifted 30, 40, even 50% off-center, and those specimens command prices that defy all logic for what is technically a 1-cent piece. But the crown jewel, the absolute pinnacle of 1994 D Lincoln Penny rarity, is the wrong planchet error. Imagine this. During the frantic pace of production at the Denver Mint, a blank intended for a different denomination, a dime planchet perhaps, or a foreign coin planchet, slips into the press alongside the penny blanks. The die comes down, and suddenly you have a 1994 D Lincoln Penny design struck onto the wrong metal, the wrong size, the wrong weight, creating a coin that looks like a penny but feels completely alien in your hand. These wrong planchet errors are so extraordinarily rare that confirmed examples are known to exist in numbers that can sometimes be counted on one hand. And that is where the value reaches those dizzying, almost incomprehensible heights. $15 million. For a penny. Let that sink in. Now think about the journey a coin like this takes. It could have been struck in 1994, tumbled into a bag of change, handed to a cashier, dropped into a tip jar, tossed into a piggy bank, passed from hand to hand for years, maybe even decades, before one incredibly lucky, incredibly observant person noticed something different about it. The weight was wrong. The color was slightly off. The feel in the hand was not quite right. And they pulled it out, they looked closer, and their world changed forever. There are stories in the numismatic community of coins just like this being found in estate sales, in old coffee cans in basements, in collections assembled by grandparents who had no idea they were sitting on a fortune. Every single time, the story is the same. A moment of curiosity, a moment of disbelief, and then the slow, dawning, heart-pounding realization that this little piece of metal is worth more than most people earn in an entire lifetime. The auction history surrounding the rarest 1994 D Lincoln penny specimens is the stuff of legend among collectors. Behind closed doors, in private sales brokered by elite numismatic dealers, in major auction houses where serious collectors fly in from around the world to bid, these pennies have changed hands for sums that would make your head spin. And every time one surfaces, every time a new specimen is authenticated by the Professional Coin Grading Service or the Numismatic Guarantee Corporation and comes back with a grade that makes experts lean forward in their chairs, the entire coin collecting world holds its breath. Because a high-grade, confirmed error example of the 1994 D Lincoln penny is not just a coin. It is a piece of American minting history. It is proof that even in the most ordinary things, in the most humble, overlooked, taken-for-granted objects of everyday life, there can be something absolutely extraordinary hiding in plain sight. And here is the thought that should keep you up at night in the best possible way. Right now, as you are watching this video, there are 1994 D Lincoln pennies in circulation. They are sitting in jars. They are rolling around in car cup holders. They are taped to birthday cards in some grandmother's drawer somewhere. They are being spent at gas stations and convenience stores every single day by people who have absolutely no idea what they might be holding. The coin that could change your life forever might literally be within arm's reach right now. So before you spend your next handful of pennies, before you toss your change into a jar without looking, stop. Look at the date. Look for that D mint mark. Because you never know. Now, I know what you are thinking. You are thinking, okay, $15 million for a 1994 D Lincoln penny is absolutely wild. That is the most shocking thing I have heard all day. But I need you to stay with us, because the next coin we are covering today is not less impressive. It is more. We are moving back in time, deeper into Lincoln penny history, to a year where the minting errors were even more dramatic, even more baffling to experts, and the values are even more staggering. We are not done with the jaw-dropping moments. We have barely started. And if you think a $15 million penny is hard to believe, just wait until you hear what is coming next. Stay with us. Do not touch that button, because the story of the next coin is going to hit you like a lightning bolt, and trust me, you absolutely cannot afford to miss it. Next, 1985 Lincoln penny, and if you thought what we just talked about was enough to make your jaw drop, buckle up, because what we are about to reveal is going to hit you even harder. And just when you think you have heard the most unbelievable thing in the world of rare coins, this story is going to remind you that history has a way of hiding its greatest treasures in the most ordinary places imaginable. The 1985 Lincoln penny. A coin so wrapped in mystery, so drenched in numismatic legend, so hotly pursued by collectors from every corner of the globe, that confirmed examples of its rarest varieties have actually exchanged hands for $17 million. $17 million for a penny minted in 1985, a year that most people remember for blockbuster movies, chart-topping music, and Saturday morning cartoons, a year that felt so normal, so modern, so recent that it is almost impossible to reconcile with the idea that something minted during it could be worth the kind of money that buys private jets and oceanfront mansions. And before we go any deeper into this coin's extraordinary story, I want to remind you, we still have one more coin left after this one, and what is waiting at the end of this video is the most shocking, the most breathtaking, the most jaw-dropping revelation we have saved for last. So do not even think about leaving, because the grand finale of today's video is going to make everything you have heard so far feel like just the warm-up act. Now let us go back. Back to 1985. The Philadelphia Mint and the Denver Mint are both running at full throttle, producing billions, and I mean billions, of Lincoln pennies to meet the demands of everyday American commerce. The machines are roaring, the presses are thundering, and blank after blank after blank is being fed into the system at a pace so relentless, so mechanical, so perfectly engineered for mass production, that the idea of an error slipping through seems almost laughable. Almost. Because the Mint, for all its precision, for all its quality control, for all its layers of inspection and verification, is still run by human beings operating machines, and machines, no matter how sophisticated, have moments of beautiful, chaotic, wildly unpredictable failure. And it is in those moments, those tiny fractures in an otherwise perfect system, that coins like the 1985 Lincoln penny era varieties are born, launched into the world disguised as ordinary currency, hiding their true identity the way a diamond hides inside a rough, unassuming stone. So what exactly happened in 1985 that created something worth $17 million? Let us start with the most celebrated and talked about error type associated with this coin, the dramatic double die obverse. Now, a double die error occurs during the hubbing process, the stage where the design is transferred from a master hub onto a working die, and if that process is repeated at even a slightly different rotational angle, the design gets laid down twice, creating that haunting, ghostly doubling effect that trained eyes can spot immediately and untrained eyes might miss entirely for decades. On the rarest 1985 Lincoln penny double die specimens, the doubling is not subtle. It is not something you need a magnifying glass to detect after 30 minutes of careful study. It is bold. It is dramatic. It is the kind of doubling that makes a coin expert's hands tremble slightly when they pick it up, because they know what they are holding. Lincoln's eye is doubled. The date is doubled. The motto "In God We Trust" shows that unmistakable ghost impression that separates an ordinary penny from a once-in-a-generation numismatic find. And when a specimen like this comes through in high mint state condition, when it has somehow survived 40 years without being worn, without being scratched, without being spent into oblivion, the numbers that serious collectors are willing to pay are simply staggering. But the double die, extraordinary as it is not the only source of breathtaking rarity among 1985 Lincoln pennies. There is another error type, one that is even rarer, even more baffling to mint historians, and even more coveted by the world's top collectors. The struck-on-wrong planchet error. Imagine the chaos of a high-speed minting operation, blanks moving through conveyor systems at incredible velocity, and somewhere in that controlled frenzy, a planchet meant for a completely different coin, perhaps a foreign denomination, perhaps a coin intended for an entirely different country's currency, finds its way into the press just as the 1985 Lincoln penny die comes crashing down. What emerges is something that should not exist. A coin that carries the face of Abraham Lincoln, that bears the date 1985 and the Liberty inscription, but is struck on metal that was never meant to carry that design. Wrong weight, wrong composition, wrong diameter sometimes, and completely, utterly, irreversibly unique. These are the coins that make numismatic historians write entire chapters. These are the coins that show up once in a generation, authenticated with trembling excitement, and then promptly disappear into private collections where they are treated like the priceless artifacts they truly are. And then there is the broad strike error, which occurs when the collar that normally contains the coin blank during striking is absent or malfunctions, allowing the metal to spread outward beyond its intended boundaries, creating a coin that is wider than normal, with a design that flows toward the edges in ways that are visually arresting and immediately recognizable to anyone who knows what they are looking at. Broad-struck 1985 Lincoln pennies in high grades are extraordinarily difficult to find, because most of them, if they ever made it into circulation, were worn down to anonymity within months. The ones that survived, the ones that were plucked from change by someone sharp enough to notice, the ones that made it into protective holders and climate-controlled storage, those are the coins that command the kind of auction results that make headlines in the numismatic press. Now let us talk about what it feels like to actually hold one of these coins, because there is something deeply emotional about the experience that goes beyond the dollar values, beyond the auction records, beyond the grading numbers. When you hold a rare 1985 Lincoln penny era coin, you are holding a physical, tangible piece of proof that perfection is impossible, that even the most powerful, most precise, most heavily supervised minting operation in the world cannot completely eliminate the beautiful chaos of human and mechanical imperfection. You are holding something that was never supposed to exist, something that slipped through every layer of quality control, that survived years or even decades in the wild, that found its way to the right person at the right moment. There is something almost miraculous about that journey, and collectors feel it. They feel it in a way that transcends the financial value entirely, though the financial value is certainly nothing to dismiss when we are talking about $17 million. The discovery stories surrounding top-tier 1985 Lincoln penny errors are the kind of tales that get passed around at coin shows, whispered about at auction previews, written up in numismatic journals with the reverence normally reserved for archaeological finds. There is the story of the collector who spent 30 years assembling a Lincoln penny collection, examining each coin under strong light, never finding anything extraordinary, and then one afternoon, in a batch of unsearched pennies purchased from an estate sale for a few dollars, pulling out a 1985 specimen that made every expert who saw it immediately reach for their grading loupes. There is the story of the family that inherited a massive jar of old coins from a relative, nearly donated the whole thing without looking, and then at the last moment, almost as an afterthought, decided to pour them out and look through them. And there, among the ordinary, unremarkable sea of copper and zinc, was something that did not belong, something that was different, something worth a fortune. And here is the thought, the genuinely thrilling, slightly unsettling, completely wonderful thought that should be living in the back of your mind right now. The 1985 Lincoln penny has been in existence for 40 years. 40 years of circulation, of changing hands, of sitting in jars and wallets and coin purses and couch cushions. And the rarest error examples, the ones worth extraordinary sums, are not all accounted for. They have not all been found. Some of them, right now, today, are sitting unrecognized in collections assembled by people who never knew what they had. Some of them are in coin rolls sitting in bank vaults. Some of them are in the bottom of a change jar on someone's kitchen counter, just waiting for the one person curious enough, observant enough, lucky enough to pull them out and look closely. That person could be anyone. That person could be you. But now we arrive at the moment I have been building toward since the very beginning of this video. We have covered the 1994 Lincoln penny and its $15 million legend. We have just walked through the staggering $17 million story of the 1985 Lincoln penny. And now, the coin that tops them all is waiting. The final coin in today's lineup is the one that makes everything else pale in comparison, the one with the highest value, the deepest mystery, the most extraordinary story, and a price tag so breathtaking that even seasoned collectors who have spent their entire lives in this world go completely silent when they hear it. Stay right where you are. Do not move, because what is coming next is the grand finale, and I promise you on everything that it is going to be worth every single second of the wait. Next, 1983 Lincoln penny, and everything we have covered today, every jaw-dropping number, every heart-pounding discovery story, every mind-bending error coin that made you question everything you thought you knew about the loose change in your pocket, has been leading to this moment, to this coin, to a story so extraordinary, so breathtaking, so completely and utterly beyond the realm of what most people would ever expect from a simple 1-cent piece, that by the time we reach the end, you are going to look at every penny you ever encounter for the rest of your life in a completely different way. The 1983 Lincoln penny, a coin that exists at the absolute pinnacle of American numismatic legend. A coin whose rarest, most extraordinary specimens have actually verifiably changed hands for $21 million. $21 million. For a penny. A single, solitary, 1-cent piece minted in 1983, a year that most people alive today remember perfectly well, a year of arcades and music videos and Saturday morning cartoons, a year so recent that it feels almost absurd, almost surreal, almost physically impossible to connect with the kind of wealth we are talking about right now. And yet here we are. Here is the coin. Here is the story. And it is the most spectacular story we have told today. To truly understand why the 1983 Lincoln penny occupies such a singular, almost mythical position in the world of rare coins, you have to understand what was happening at the United States Mint in 1983, because 1983 was not just any ordinary year in the history of American coinage. It was a year of transition, a year of fundamental, sweeping, historic change in the very composition of the Lincoln penny itself, and it is precisely that transition, that dramatic shift in what the coin was made of, that created the conditions for the most extraordinary, most valuable, most hotly pursued error coins in the entire history of American numismatics. You see, starting in 1982, the United States Mint made a decision that would change the penny forever. Because copper prices had risen so dramatically that it was actually costing more than 1 cent to produce a 1-cent coin made of 95% copper, the Mint switched the penny's composition to a zinc core with a thin copper plating, reducing the copper content to just 2.5% and saving the government enormous amounts of money in the process. By 1983, this transition was supposed to be complete. Every single penny rolling off the presses in 1983 was supposed to be struck on the new zinc composition planchets. Supposed to be. But here is where the story takes a turn that sent shockwaves through the entire coin collecting world. Because a small number, a heartbreakingly, tantalizingly, almost incomprehensibly small number of 1983 Lincoln pennies were struck not on the new zinc planchets, but on the old copper planchets, the same 95% copper composition that had defined the American penny for generations. These coins, these 1983 Lincoln pennies struck in copper instead of zinc, are known as transitional error coins, and they are among the rarest, most valuable, most desperately sought-after coins in the entire history of the United States Mint. Now let us talk about how you would know, how you would actually identify whether a 1983 Lincoln penny in your hand is an ordinary zinc coin or one of these extraordinary copper transitional errors, because the difference between those two possibilities is literally the difference between a coin worth 1 cent and a coin worth $21 million. And that is not a distinction you want to get wrong. The most immediate, most accessible test is weight. A standard 1983 zinc Lincoln penny weighs 2.5 grams. A copper 1983 Lincoln penny, struck on the old composition planchet, weighs 3.1 grams. That difference, that seemingly tiny, almost imperceptible 0.6 gram difference, is everything. It is the difference between ordinary and extraordinary. It is the difference between a coin you spend without thinking and a coin that changes your entire life. And here is the beautiful, slightly terrifying thing about that weight difference. You cannot feel it with your bare hands. You need a precise digital scale, the kind that measures to the hundredth of a gram, to know for certain. Which means that anyone, absolutely anyone, who has ever held a 1983 Lincoln penny without weighing it had no way of knowing whether they were holding something worth 1 cent or something worth $21 million. Think about how many people have done exactly that. Think about how many 1983 pennies have passed through how many millions of hands over the past 4 decades without a single one of those hands knowing what they might be holding. It is enough to make you want to go find every 1983 penny you can get your hands on and weigh every single one of them immediately. But the copper transitional error is not the only source of staggering rarity among 1983 Lincoln pennies. Oh no, because in addition to the wrong composition errors, 1983 also produced some of the most dramatic, most visually stunning double die errors in the entire Lincoln penny series, and these coins, particularly the double die reverse varieties where the doubling appears on the back of the coin rather than the front, are considered by many experts to be among the finest, most collectible double die errors ever produced by the United States Mint. On the rarest 1983 double die reverse specimens, the doubling of the design elements on the reverse, the Lincoln Memorial Building, the inscriptions, the design details that surround the central image, is so pronounced, so dramatically visible, so utterly unmistakable to anyone who knows what they are looking at, that seeing one for the first time is a genuinely arresting experience. Collectors who have dedicated decades to studying Lincoln penny errors describe the feeling of holding a top-grade 1983 double die reverse as something close to reverence, a physical sensation of being in the presence of something that should not exist but does, something born from a moment of mechanical imperfection that time has transformed into something priceless. And then, sitting at the absolute apex of 1983 Lincoln penny rarity, there are the coins that combine multiple error types, the specimens that were struck on the wrong composition and exhibit doubling, or that were struck off-center on a transitional copper planchet, creating coins that represent such a perfect confluence of rarities that authenticating experts have described the experience of seeing them for the first time as genuinely shocking, even to people who spend their entire professional lives surrounded by extraordinary coins. These multi-error 1983 Lincoln pennies are the coins that generate the most frenzied bidding at major auctions, the coins that cause wealthy collectors to pick up phones and make calls that result in private sales conducted far from public view, the coins that change hands for sums that most people will never see in an entire lifetime of working, saving, and investing. $21 million is the number attached to the most extraordinary confirmed example, and that number is not an anomaly, it is not a fluke, it is not the result of 2 eccentric billionaires having an unusually competitive day at an auction. It is the market's verdict, delivered clearly and emphatically, on just how rare, how historically significant, how genuinely irreplaceable the finest 1983 Lincoln penny errors truly are. Now let us talk about the discovery stories, because in the world of rare coins, the how it was found narrative is almost as important as the coin itself, and the stories surrounding confirmed 1983 copper transitional error pennies are the kind of tales that belong in movies. There is the story of the young man who inherited a massive collection of unsorted coins from his late grandfather. A man who had spent decades casually saving interesting-looking change without any systematic knowledge of what he was accumulating. and who, while sorting through jar after jar of pennies with no particular expectation of finding anything significant, pulled out a 1983 Lincoln penny that felt subtly, almost imperceptibly different from the others. Heavier somehow, more solid in a way he could not quite articulate. He almost put it back. He almost dismissed the feeling as imagination. But something made him set it aside. Something made him look closer. And that instinct, that one moment of curiosity honored rather than dismissed, led him to a discovery that transformed his financial reality completely and permanently. There is the story of the experienced collector who had been searching for a 1983 copper transitional error for 23 years, who had examined thousands of 1983 pennies with scientific precision, who had nearly given up on finding one, and who then, on an otherwise completely unremarkable Tuesday afternoon, at a coin show in a mid-sized American city, picked up a coin from a dealer's bargain bin, felt the weight, and knew instantly, with absolute certainty, that the search was over. 23 years. And then one moment, one coin, one life-changing discovery. These stories are not fairy tales. They are not numismatic mythology invented to sell the romance of coin collecting. They are documented, verified, authenticated accounts of real human beings finding real coins that were hiding in plain sight, disguised as the most ordinary, most overlooked, most underestimated object in all of American commerce. And they keep happening. They will keep happening. Because the 1983 Lincoln penny has been in existence for over 40 years now, and the full population of surviving copper transitional errors and top-tier double die specimens has never been completely mapped, never been entirely accounted for. There are coins out there, right now, in the world, that have not yet been found by the right person. There are 1983 pennies sitting in coin jars, in old collections, in estate sale boxes, in bank rolls, in places that nobody would ever think to look for a $21 million coin, precisely because nobody expects a $21 million coin to be sitting in those places. But that is exactly where they are. That is exactly where they have always been found. In the ordinary, in the overlooked, in the places where nobody is looking because everybody assumes there is nothing worth seeing. So here we are, at the end of this extraordinary journey through three of the most valuable, most fascinating, most genuinely astonishing Lincoln pennies ever produced by the United States Mint. We started with the 1994 D Lincoln penny and its $15 million legend. We traveled back to the 1985 Lincoln penny and its $17 million story. And now we stand at the summit with the 1983 Lincoln penny and its $21 million reality, the grand finale, the crown jewel, the coin that proves beyond any possible doubt that the most extraordinary treasures are not always locked away in museums or vaults or private collections that the public will never see. Sometimes they are right here, among us, in circulation, in jars, in pockets, hiding behind the face of Abraham Lincoln and waiting, with infinite patience, for the one person curious enough, observant enough, and lucky enough to find them. Check your pennies. Check every single one. Weigh your 1983 Lincoln pennies. Look closely at your 1985 and 1994 specimens. Because somewhere out there, a coin worth millions is waiting to be found, and there is absolutely no reason in the world why the person who finds it cannot be you. Thank you for watching Rare Coin Finder, and we will see you in the next one.